Susie, thank you for that introduction. I've been asked to talk with you all about the work we're doing here in Indiana on datacasting, specifically to talk about the process we followed to secure grant funding and what the services look like that we're providing to school districts. First, however, you should know that this technology isn't new to us. We've long been proponents of datacasting and had prior experience with it through a public safety project we piloted in rural Adams County a few years ago. And like all of you, of course, we have an education mandate that dates back some 50 years and sits at the core of who we are as an organization. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we renewed that mandate. We just did it in a somewhat different way than normal when we began taking steps to deploy educational datacasting to bridge the gap between the digital haves and have-nots. Our motivation was simple: to do our part to make sure that kids didn't fall behind in school. But let me step back just a moment to last March. At the outset of the pandemic, and at the request of our State Department of Education, we developed a rapid response programming template that all of our IPBS member TV stations used to publish broadcast schedules with links to corresponding PBS learning media resources. The schedules proved to be a useful tool, and we've continued to publish them weekly on DOE's website. But we also realized they weren't enough. The instructional piece was missing. They were missing the pedagogy. And quite frankly, that's where datacasting came in. The question that the Adams County experience prompted for us was, could datacasting be used for remote learning during a pandemic and beyond to help students who didn't have internet access? The simple answer was yes. This led to several email exchanges and phone conversations and webinars with key influencers in our state and possible funders, both inside and outside of state government, to test the idea. Our focus was on making the case with them for datacasting, increasing their comfort level with the technology, and fortifying our relationships should a funding opportunity materialize. We wanted to equip them with information so they could have their own conversations on the subject. Socializing the tech was an all-consuming process and an uphill climb that took many months, but ultimately it led to people contacting my office to learn more. Exactly what we wanted. Most importantly, it led to our state's director of broadband opportunity reaching out for information, and he inviting us into a conversation with the superintendent of Jennings County School Corporation. The superintendent saw our vision and quickly became a champion, our champion for educational datacasting. So much so, in fact, that her school district partnered with IPBS on the grant application that resulted in us being awarded $6.7 million in GEAR and CARES Act funding to deploy datacasting across the state through our 8 TV stations. For those of you who aren't familiar with the technology, datacasting essentially mimics the internet experience, but instead of using broadband or Wi-Fi, it uses TV broadcast spectrum to carry data, like video and homework assignments, tests, to a student's computer securely and in a targeted manner. In other words, it uses our over-the-air signal and goes places where LTE and 5G don't, and it does so much less expensively than broadband. Each of our member stations has been outfitted with the necessary equipment to distribute data files into the broadcast stream thanks to this grant. And together with WTIU, our station in Bloomington, we've initially stood up 300 households in Jennings County with datacasting receivers and antennas. Ultimately, that number will expand to 1,200 households. An additional 7,000 households will be stood up by our other stations. We currently have 6 school districts lined up to join JCSC, and 10 more that we're working with to determine if they have the capacity to support this initiative. That is, the leadership, the curriculum, and the technical support to get behind it. They also have to have a demonstrated need, and that's determined through a rubric we've created. In total, we expect to serve as many as 11,000 students in Indiana with this implementation. We anticipate being fully operational by mid-March. We're not trying to replace broadband, but we are trying to come to the aid of students and school districts where access to the internet is a challenge, whatever the reason. Our commitment to teachers and students is to meet school districts where they are and integrate datacasting with the commercially available learning management systems that they're using in order to increase access for kids and to level the playing field. As we've moved forward with this project, we've actively sought input from participating teachers and district partners on the engineering of our datacasting deployment. They've guided our design and development, and they've told us what's important to them, and we're building our program to suit their priorities. To illustrate, we've already created a user interface package for Google Classroom. We chose to start with Google Classroom because it's the most commonly used LMS in Indiana. Our school district partners provided feedback on its features and capabilities every step of the way. We're now moving on to Canvas. And then we're going to go to Seesaw and Schoology because they're the next most commonly used LMSs in our state. And we've learned some things along the way too. We've learned that access to the internet is not as simple as either you have it or you don't have it. In fact, there's a large gray area in between. And this gray area is made up of households that have internet connectivity, but it's not sufficient to accommodate schoolwork because there may be multiple student users in the house and parents may be working from home. Plus, there are always other competing priorities. Or it could be because the available internet service doesn't readily support streaming, or the service plan may be limited to only a parent's cell phone. Datacasting addresses each of these concerns, and learning about them to our way of thinking has only strengthened Datacasting's value proposition. Also, we expected that we'd be serving a low-income, no internet population, but what we've learned is that we're actually serving a mixed income, mixed internet access population that lives in both the outlying areas and population centers of our state. It signaled to us that the access problem is more widespread than we originally thought. In addition, we learned that there's interest in datacasting within Indiana's rather large Amish population because it's a secure system and it's targetable. The internet isn't a consideration for them due to concerns over the access that their kids would have to undesirable content. And finally, we learned that there's a use case for datacasting outside the normal school year as a tool for summer remediation or enrichment or individual student work. We believe we'll continue to learn more as we move forward with our implementation and that it will be useful not only in Indiana, but throughout the country. We're not alone in our efforts to stand up datacasting either. A half dozen other states are in the process of doing it too. We've joined forces with South Carolina, Pennsylvania PBS as datacasting pioneers, as well as a host of others, to expand public media's use of datacasting as an educational resource in both ATSC1 and ATSC3 environments. Datacasting is being adopted by states with the ambition to transition to ATSC3. For example, some of us are already deploying next generation datacasting receivers that will function in an ATSC3 world. In addition, we were mindful of next generation TV in our GEAR grant application and specified equipment allowances in the submission materials for such things as next gen transmitters and encoders, antennas that will seed each of our stations transition to ATSC3. And Pennsylvania PBS is spearheading an ambitious effort to design a comprehensive indexing tool for datacasting educational media datacasted educational media products that will benefit the entire public broadcasting system. When it's completed, it will help smooth the transition from ATSC1 to ATSC3 as well. You can see from what I've described that there's a lot of work being done. It's being done by a lot of really good folks. As I close, I just would like to reiterate one thing. We in Indiana are pursuing datacasting with vigor out of the belief that it is a necessary part of a broader solution. Someday schools will reopen, but there's going to be a new reality where remote learning and work from home will be a natural and expected part of everybody's life. If households don't have reliable broadband at their disposal, then the children in those homes will continue to fall further behind in school. In that scenario, datacasting can be a difference maker, an equalizer, and a practical one at that. Now, please watch as we roll a video on Next Gen TV produced by PBS North Carolina.